A few years ago, Keds stopped making men's shoes altogether. There are a few differences between the men's and women's that keep me from just wanting to upsize a women's pair. So the best thing we can do now is try to find a used pair online. I was lucky enough to find this pair of white men's Keds that have never been worn and are essentially brand new on a used clothing website, but I don't want white, so I'm going to dye them today. The dye that we're using will affect the rubber, so the first thing we have to do is make sure that doesn't happen. We're going to cover all of the rubber with a thin coating of Vaseline. Some instructions will tell you to try electrical tape here to mask off the rubber, but I've tried that and it doesn't work, so definitely use this method. It works so much better. I'm using hot water here. The website for this dye gives you formulas for different shades that you can make. In this case, it said to use 1 full bottle of these 2 colors for 3 gallons of water. But I wasn't quite using 3 gallons, so I decided to use about half of each color, and I just weighed the bottles to make sure that they were even. In hindsight, I kind of wish I used a little bit more just so that the color was a little darker, but it's okay. The instructions say to add a little bit of dish soap to it. You're definitely going to want to wear gloves for this because this dye will stain your skin. Try to avoid touching the rubber at all because you don't want to get that Vaseline on your fingertips and have it smear all over the canvas. With some colors, you really have to hold the item underwater for a while, but this really soaked it up right away. Remember that the color is going to be a lot darker while it's wet, so make it darker than you think you'll want it in the end. You can see how well the Vaseline works to keep that color off the rubber. Once you take them out, you don't want to rinse them just yet. We're going to apply some dye fixative to these now. There are a few different ways of doing it. You can fill the sink again and pour it in there, or you can apply it directly like I am here. They recommend to do it this way in the instructions, so that's what I'm going to do. I just found this old spray top, and that's what I'm going to use. You're going to want to saturate these pretty well. Make sure you get the backs and the insides and the tongues and everything that you can. And then let this sit for 20 minutes. While we wait, I'm just going to take the time to clean up this mess on this side. I'm going to use this sink again to rinse the shoes, so I'm going to make sure I get all the dye out as best I can. I'm just using warm water here this time. I added a little bit of salt. Some of the instructions mentioned doing this. I don't know what it does exactly, but I figured I might as well. And then a little bit of soap too. That's 20 minutes, so I can finally rinse these off. Now that these are pretty clean, this is when we have to get the Vaseline off. You can't just rinse it off, so you have to wipe it with something, and that's what I'm doing here. They were still a little greasy, so I'm wiping them down now with just wet paper towels, trying to get as much of that off as I can. If you did get any dye on the rubber, you can use a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser with acetone to get it off. There's really no substitute for those erasers. They work better than anything. So that's one last thorough rinse, and I'm going to set these out in the garage to dry. You're going to want to set them in a way where the water can all run out freely. You don't want it pooling up in any section at all. I left those overnight, and the next day they were completely dry. You can see how dramatic the color difference is here now that they're dry. Now we're just going to lace them up with those original laces, and we're ready to go. One thing I should note is that this process doesn't only work on white shoes. If you have colored canvas shoes and you want to change the color, just soak them in bleach water overnight until they turn white, and then you can dye them all the same. I've done it and it works great. With this method, you really just need to find shoes that are your size, and you can make them any color you want. The first time I did it, I really was surprised by just how easy it is. It really is foolproof. That's all there is to it. It almost looks like they were made that way.